Hello and welcome to Good Things, a podcast about good things. On this week's show, we're going to be talking about Shaun of the Dead turning 20 and the resurgence of zombie movies in the 2000s. So yeah, welcome to the show. Like we're saying, this week's show, it's going to be primarily about Shaun of the Dead, as it's turning 20 this year. Well, what better time to talk about it? We could have talked about when it was turning 19.
Or 21.
But yeah, maybe 21 probably. But yeah, 21 means something over in America. Like 21 doesn't really mean anything
Keys
over
to the
here.
kingdom or anything like that.
Because normally over here you can drink from when you're 12.
Or earlier if you want.
Yeah, but yeah, look, it is what we're going to be talking about, the resurgence of zombie movies in the 2000s. Because Shaun of the Dead, I think, gets a lot of credit for the revival of the zombie movies. Because, like, the zombie movies, they were, like, you had Romero's one, obviously, in the 60s. The 70s, they were kind of a thing, but a lot of people probably trying to make money off Romero. But there's, like, only a handful of films, I suppose, would be considered classics. Then in the 80s, you had a lot of zombie movies, but kind of near the end of the 80s, they started tapering
seen
off.
as a big kitsch or something.
But now,
like
the
that, yeah.
zombie movies, because some people consider Evil Dead a zombie movie, I wouldn't consider Evil Dead a zombie movie at all, because they're not reanimated corpses. They're, like, possessed by Kandarian demons. And as well, some people consider Reanimator a zombie movie, where I suppose technically it is, but it's not really.
It's more of a Frankenstein, I think, story.
Yeah, that's why you could say Frankenstein is a zombie as well. Some people would.
Somebody could say the story of Jesus Christ is a zombie story.
Well, it is. They left it out about him eating the brains of the apostles at the end. He's like, no, Jesus said brains. But yeah, the 90s zombie movies are pretty much dead. You had a couple of ones that are coming out. Not many highlights, and then I suppose Resident Evil, the computer game, kind of kickstarted a lot of the thing about zombies again, because it made zombies scary.
When was 28 Days Later?
This is what I was going to get to. 28 days later was, I think, 2002, if I'm right. I have a timeline here for it, but yeah, 28 Days Later is actually, I think, where it all started again, because you had like a couple of them before. And Versus, do you remember Versus?
No,
it was a Japanese thing. It would have been at the time, I suppose, late 90s. There was this whole thing where people started getting really interested in Japanese horror movies. And Versus was Japanese. Well, it's more than a zombie movie. There's like weird I can't even remember, but I remember I was like always trying to get at it, because it was one of those movies where people, you have to see Versus. You have to see it. And then
Did you ever?
Yeah, we got it. And I think it was like, I seem to remember like fights with zombies in the forest.
Now, is this in real life, or is this in film?
Could have been real life. I don't know. It's all a bit blurry. But yeah, I think that it's definitely 28 Days Later was the start of the whole thing. But remember 28 Days Later with Danny Boyle, they were very much keen on it's not zombies, they're the infected.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of films that were kind of
they're almost going against the zombie trope. They're kind of like, no, look, they're fast, they're vicious, they're super speedy. They're not like your shambling zombies from the old school kind of.
It's the same as anything. When something does well, all of a sudden
bandwagon
a fucking load of people kind of come along with it. Resident Evil was the same year. Paul W. Anderson's. I think because there's a couple of versions of it now, but and that was. I thought it was a bit crap when it came out. I was really disappointed, because it's the same as a lot of fucking stuff. It looks similar to the game, but it's not it was like it was made for kids. It wasn't like brutal, but it did bring back like the slow paced zombies.
Yeah.
And I suppose I don't know, it wasn't really faithful to the game, but I didn't like it.
Huey Bowl, The House of the Dead, was that the one where they all went on the island?
I think it was,
they got trapped. They're all going to a party on an island, and
I think it might have been. Yeah, Huey Bowl kind of went in trying to exploit the whole thing of the video games being like with Resident Evil success. Doing it, of course, that was the start of Huey Bowl kind of like becoming known as a bit of a hack.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, I've seen a few of these films, and they're not as bad as people make them. They're not good, but they're not as bad as people make them out to be.
They're not good, but much better than that. And you or I probably do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I remember the whole thing where he was like boxing critics, which is
bizarre enough in its own right.
Fair, and some critics got into it thinking like, oh, this is just going to be like a bit of a joke, and got the shit bit out of him because like he was like basically fucking like he was a well-trained boxer. Like I think he was like semi-amateur when he was younger and stuff. But yeah, it was like those two started it, whereas a lot of people they get confused, I think, with the timeline, and they're like, oh, Shaun of the Dead popularised it. When Shaun of the Dead came out, like it got rave reviews, but it was a very underground thing. It was people that would have been into Spaced, which was a TV show that Edgar Wright and
was that BBC or Channel 4? Channel 4, wasn't it? Yeah,
because I think I could be wrong now on this, but I think Shaun of the Dead was funded by Film 4. I think it was around the time Film 4 was kind of getting started.
Yeah, getting its foothold in things.
Yeah, but like Spaced was, I suppose, every episode they take like nearly like a Seinfeld kind of thing where nothing really, but they kind of added in a lot of pop cultural references and a lot of video game things. So they had one where it was like where there were zombies in it, like and they'd kind of throw. I don't know how you'd really describe Space, but
basically, it was something that I suppose everyone of our age would have watched and identified with, because it's basically about sort of like early 20-something year olds that were living in like a rented kind of a rundown house and just trying to live their lives.
He was working at a comic book, and he wanted to be a comic book artist, and Daisy wanted to be an actress, was it? So it was like they were.
And there was an artist then renting the room downstairs.
I forgot about him in it. And so it's like their life, and then Nick Frost plays like the best friend in it again.
And he's kind of like a Dwight kind of a character almost, insofar as he's into like, I remember it's territorial army and I like my guns and I like my shooting and all the rest. But yeah, if anybody knows one of those people, you know one of those people.
Yeah, if anyone has seen Edgar Wright movies and they haven't seen Space, you'll love it, because it's where his directorial style kind of like flourished, where he's taken all his influences like The Evil Dead, and like I mean you see there's so many references in the whole series going through it with different bits and pieces, and it would have been, I suppose, before nerd culture, for lack of a better word, really, where it was cool to do things. So it was really nice to see a TV show where there was like, oh my god, like
they like what we like. He's playing with Transformers, you know. It's
and he's got like comic, and as well, I seem to remember some of the comic book covers that they did. I don't know if Simon Bisley drew them, but they were done in Simon Bisley style. It might have been another artist, or it might have been so. But like seeing that, I was like, fucking hell, you know, that's not like someone going off and
just doing it for the sake of it, like that. But every character in it was very well.
Sorry,
observed.
The dog is acting a dickhead there.
Yes. But yeah, like I mean, every character in it, like you had Marta, who was the landlady, I should say, and Fliss, who was the sort of the.
Oh God, I forgot about her as well. Yeah. Well, she an actress as well. Yeah. You know? But that was a whole Spaced. It was an underground hit, I suppose. It really took off I think it took off with DVD more so, because for anyone who kind of laments like the demise of TV, one of the worst things about it was, I think they put Spaced on like a Friday night at around 9 or 10 o'clock. So if you were
target audience are always out in the pub.
Yeah. And like I mean, even the whole thing about the characters are around in the pub. So you're not going to get to see, and then like later on they started getting repeated and stuff, because I didn't see some of it the first time around. I think it was only when it came out on DVD. It was like one of our friends, Mark, had it on DVD, and and that was like because seeing random episodes, and then it was like, oh, this is great.
You can actually get the full storyline,
So I think that's where it really, really grew, and that's probably where, you know.
And I mean, like, speaking of Shaun of the Dead, like some of the characters kind of more or less pop back up again.
They do, But like, I mean, just leading up to the Shaun of the Dead, it was really like there wasn't, other than those two things. And then the same year Shaun of the Dead came out, Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead came out, the remake of it, which I think is fucking stunning movie.
I think it's great. Yeah, it's kind of like the American version, I suppose, of Shaun of the Dead, where there is a bit of comedy, but it's like heavy on the action.
Yeah, the action is amazing, and like the zombies are fast in it as well. But they're zombies, so it's not a remake of Dawn of the Dead, but it kind of is. It was written by James Gunn as well, if people don't know.
Right. I didn't know that.
So that was the whole thing about it. So you had two heavy hitters coming up, really.
Yeah. And I suppose it's this whole synchronicity thing that people talk about, where two people make exactly the same thing, but without knowing each other is doing it, and on opposite sides of the world.
The thing is, like, I mean, you can say it takes a while to make movies.
Kind of a thing. Do you remember there's two of them popped up at the same time? There was two like Independence Days. There was two fucking like End of the Earth kind of things.
Well, Well, you had the zombie kind of thing was starting to happen again, you know, and but like so much time goes into making a film. It's like 2 years before with 28 Days Later. I think 28 Days Later might have opened the thing, but it's not like they would have seen it and went, oh, let's make this movie. And it would have came out 2 years later. You know, it's not a Roger Corman fucking kind of deal where
Turn
it's like make it in a weekend.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine they were making it a long time before. Because you can see the ideas, like we were saying with space, the ideas for Shaun of the Dead were there. But like, I suppose getting into Shaun of the Dead, like we were saying, it's 20 years old. Went back rewatching it there the other night. It hasn't aged.
No, exactly. Yeah, the comedy is still fresh. The characters themselves are still fairly, you know, they're fresh as well. The jokes even, you know what I mean? Like it all holds up really, really well. They're not overly relying on sort of tropes that would only survive in like the early 2000s. You know, I mean, okay, people probably would have mobile phones a little bit more nowadays, but they had mobile phones back then, and it's just you didn't get a chance to use them that much. Yeah.
And like, we would take it you're familiar with the plot, but if you're not, I'm not going to describe the plot. Jeez, if you're listening to this, you know what Shaun of the Dead is. You have to treat the listeners with a bit of intelligence.
Yes, exactly.
But like a lot of people say that like the whole thing about Shaun of the Dead, and there's people that have done analysis videos of this that go on for hours and stuff, and like this isn't what this is about. But basically, some people say that, I think the more hoity-toity ones would say that like after 9/11 it was a reflection on 9/11, but the whole thing is, I think this was probably written before 9/11, and as well this zombie movies don't really change.
Yeah,
the stories are always the same. It's about like
the end of the earth. There's a group of people band together. They try to fight the zombies. They try to get to a safe space. They try to defend the safe space. They gather up their loved ones, and that's all. Like, I mean, every zombie movie, that's all.
I mean, guaranteed there's outliers, but there's always like just trying to. It's like the individual against the herd, or small groups of people against the mindless masses.
Yeah,
with it.
Like you look at The Walking Dead and the likes of that, you know. It's exactly that.
Yeah, there's always that, and it's always like, oh well, the real monsters are people. You know, that's kind of fucking thing where it's like people's characters get tested under stress. But like cowboy movies were like that they had it in kind of like, for lack of a better word, like Indians, like cowboys and Indians with it, where it was like, you know, a group of cowboys outnumbered by Indians, or it was like World War II films of Vietnam. There was loads of Vietnam. Rambo with it, you know, guaranteed there's more racial connotations there at some of those
I hope
movies.
we're not calling Vietnamese people zombies, basically.
No, but you know that I'm on about, like, you know, the small group of survivors against like, you know, a massive
the few against the many, basically.
But like, so I think the 9/11 comparisons, or maybe it's after 9/11 people were, but I don't like 9/11 was a fucking horrific thing, and it changed the world, but it was a massive thing in America. But I don't think it would have impacted Japanese people that much. I don't think it would have influenced Japanese culture that much, and like a lot of the zombie stuff really started coming out of Japan in the late 90s, with even Resident Evil. You know what I mean? So I think that comparison or kind of thing about it being post 9/11.
Yeah, it's probably just the way of the world that people suddenly realise that, well, actually, civilization isn't always guaranteed, and everything could come crumbling down at any instant. You know, you could be caught up in some fucking devastating event, for want of a better word, as well, you know, where suddenly it's like it's the end of the world as far as you're concerned.
Well, I think part of that, but as well, it was like after fucking Y2K, you know, that there was this, but like the early 2000s, like other than like say stuff like with 9/11 and like, you know, the rise of global terrorism out of a thing, like for most people, kind of like, especially at that age group, it was a good time. And say movie wise, with horror movies, I think what was after happening, the 90s were considered by some to be terrible for horror movies. I don't think it was as bad. I think there were some really, really good horror movies came out of the 90s. But I think it was after reaching a point where it was like people were exhausted with.
They were oversaturated throughout the 80s and early 90s, I think. And people, it was like, another horror film. It was just seen as like a bit passé, and it was like, no, we're moving on to other things now.
Well, you had the revival of slasher movies in the mid 90s and the late 90s. And I think that was after running its course. So people were looking for like fucking
the fresh new thing.
What's the new thing? And like possession movies became a thing in the 2000s as well, where it's like, and there's still a thing where it's like straight to video fucking.
The likes of the Blair Witch as well, you know, the found footage and all that kind of stuff.
But that's it. I think it's more about the availability of cameras and stuff like video equipment in the 90s when the technology started getting cheaper and more accessible. When people are trying to make their first film, they kind of go, oh, what's an easy? It's easy to do zombies. It's easy to do, so
certain types of
movies like the found footage. Yeah. So it's just easier to make something like that if you want to.
Yeah, you can make a bigger splash with a horror movie.
Yeah, so I think that's in part kind of like due to kind of like the resurgence of the zombie movies. With Shaun of the Dead, I don't think that's anything to do with it, because this is a love letter to Romero.
Yeah.
As well, I think maybe it would have had a harder time getting an audience or coming out if there wasn't like Resident Evil and Dawn of the Dead and those things didn't happen.
Cresting the wave, I suppose.
But
yeah, this is in the making a long time. This wasn't just a hop on the bandwagon kind of thing. It's a more fleshed out version of a scene that they had, as you said, in space, where they had tried it out and went, Jesus, we want to expand on this quite substantially.
Yeah, but I suppose again, what I was going to say with the analysis of it, I think it is, and what some people say, it's about growth. It's about the growth shown as a character. It's about him growing up.
Yeah.
Like you got the two, Ed and the other roommate. I can't remember his fucking name for the life of me, but the other roommate represents like being grown up.
Yeah. Having your normal corporate job and having your normal responsibilities and getting up and go to work.
And the extremes. The two of them are on the extremes of it, and Shaun is kind of in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's the thing, the two of them have, like, well, basically nearly everyone fucking dies on it. Apart from Shaun. Shaun goes through his growth arc. He becomes a man. He ends up killing his mother. So
obviously after she turns into a zombie, not just randomly decided.
It's constantly, he's kind of like stepping up and taking responsibility for things.
He has to do the right thing. He has to look out for the group, and he's the one that's basically coming up with the ideas and leading. Even
though he's not equipped to do it. And he's really not. Like, even they decide to give him the gun at the end, and I think he shoots maybe 2 zombies and like waste loads of bullets, where it would have been better to give it to Ed or someone else.
Who can actually shoot.
But I think it is a film about growing up and about accepting responsibility. And then at the end they're kind of at the life that he wanted anyway. It's but that's what I think it's about. So a lot of times with zombie movies, people on a budget, they normally try and use the zombies as a representation of something else, or kind of like a background for a more kind of like, a character driven story. With it. But I kind of got lost where we're going to go with the analysis.
But I suppose in general as well, you can kind of see it's the beginnings of Edgar Wright's kind of stylistic thing, where it's like things are foreshadowed and forewarned and kind of mentioned and kind of flagged up at the start, even at the very start.
It's kind of like, if you want to be an animal, why don't you go living in the fucking shed? And then at the end, he's
that's right, exactly. Or shed, even, kind of at the start, they talk about like, let's go and do a pub crawl, and they at a whole load of pubs, and like it's actually the listing of the people that they end up killing along the way. Like the King's Head is like, the stepdad, and all of this kind of stuff. So there's all this stuff that if you really want to get into the minutiae and start like, wow, oh my god, that was fucking clever, and that was flagged up there, and all the callbacks. Well, it's a great film for that.
It's constructed so well. I think I don't want to be one of these people where like modern movies are bad, because modern movies aren't bad. There's some great modern movies, but I think some of the bigger movies, they're after getting very, very lazy. Whereas I do think there was a lot more time and care went into some films, like with Shaun of the Dead, like you were saying, the amount of details in it and foreshadowing and things where you'd have to look at it like a bunch of times
to actually pick up on it.
Yeah. For the work that's put into that from that early stage,
like even the whole thing of like, when Shaun's pen leaks on him when he's
got red on you,
and that is just a motif throughout the whole thing, like you've got red on you,
or you get loads of blood all over and it's like, you got red on you. But like even just for the growth of his character, even with like Philip the stepdad, like there's some really, really touching moments in it, where it's like when he's dying and he's like, I was hard on you because I wanted to be the man that you'd admire, and I wanted to prepare you for like life.
I didn't want you to feel lesser because your dad, you didn't have your real dad around, kind of thing. And it very, very neatly kind of flipped the switch from like, broad comedy to, Jesus, this is very fucking raw emotion, very touching, and like both men are like, one is at the end of his life and the other guy is sobbing, finally realising that his stepdad was always there for him all along, even though they didn't get along all the time.
It's masterfully done. And like, I mean, for someone of their first movie, I know you did a short movie, I think, before Shaun of the Dead, but like to go from like there's a lot of people who do TV shows and they don't go on into movies and they don't have a successful career and they don't do something like Shaun of the Dead, which I'm sure people in like 40 years time will still be able to look at Shaun of the Dead and empathize with the characters, and as well still, like people are in their 20s are still going to be relatively the same. Fucking people and teenagers nowadays are the same as teenagers in the 50s, or before people were called teenagers in the, you know.
And like all the characters, the stereotypes, I suppose, out for want of a better word, archetypes is probably a better one. Like everyone knows the mum that's like, oh, I didn't want to make a fuss and I didn't want you to be upset, and like meanwhile she's nursing a zombie bite and slowly turning into a zombie, you know.
Helen Mirren was meant to get the role originally for that. It would have been very different, I think.
It would have, everyone is familiar with the Bisto lady as
well, I don't think she was the Bisto lady. That's what I was looking her up before. We were looking at it.
Who am I thinking of then?
That's what I thought she was. It was a different one. It was the Bisto lady. But
people who are outside of Ireland and the UK are not going to have a clue what the Bisto lady was.
Yeah, it was like Bisto was like gravy.
Yeah, and they had a huge advertising campaign.
Instant gravy.
Yeah, whereas like this really homely family and like the mum was just sort of like everybody's mum.
I don't know if there's American equivalent. If there is American equivalent, please tell us.
Yeah.
Or maybe Bisto was big in America. So maybe it's a worldwide thing.
I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah.
You've got brown on you.
Yeah, bread sauce. That's another one. Ugh. Would you say bread sauce is a...
I don't know. I think that's only a very specific person thing. I think that might be just you.
Bread sauce was massive in the 80s.
Yeah, I hated it.
Well, I haven't had it in a long time. Not now.
Angel's Delight.
Ugh.
No, I used to love that.
Yeah, but that's just...
Instant whip, basically.
But, yeah,
I suppose when it's all tangentially relative to the whole Three Cornettos trilogy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a dessert.
But this is the thing as well. Like we were only saying, looking at it, it's coming up on 2 hours long, I suppose.
And it
flies.
Flashes past.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's a lot of films that we've been doing podcasts on and off. Well, not off, but like for years, and we're always looking at movies. And sometimes we go back looking at movies that really, like, even when we're doing the 10 underrated comedies, there were some of those movies that were like, oh, and then we went to actually watch them again. It was like, well, you know, they don't really hold up again, you know, for a repeat viewing. Or like even Death to Smoochie, where I thought Death to Smoochie was fine, but still it was like, God, it's nowhere near as good as it was.
No,
and like Kingpin and, you know.
But I mean, Shaun of the Dead always holds up to repeat viewing, because I mean, there was stuff you were catching that you didn't catch the first 17 times around as well, you know. Oh, that's your one that was, you know, at the start she was serving in the shop and now all of a sudden she's the one that's the zombie that's coming after him, kind of a thing, you know, still doing what she was doing in life, you know.
Well, as well, I think just saying about like say repeat viewing and stuff, it's like DVDs are really hitting their stride at that, and like special edition DVD. Well, I think nearly every release was a special edition, unless it was a rental edition where they'd have the special features on the making of and commentary.
Stuff,
and I think
I miss that nowadays. Actually,
I do. That's why I really miss DVDs. But I think that was the whole thing with like it played perfectly into that era. It fit perfectly into that era because we got it, and I'm fairly sure the special, we probably still have it inside. There was a ton of features on it, and as well it did a little thing I was saying to you with 2000 AD, a promotion for it, where they had, now if you look up Wikipedia, it says that there is a different comic that they did with it. Now they could be right, but from what I can remember, it was like they had...
I love how you're challenging that your memory is better than the whole acquired knowledge and the whole centralised knowledge of the internet on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I am. But
surely someone else would go online and correct it though. Because they'd be like you going, they're wrong, I'm going to correct that.
Yeah, but you don't know. It's Wikipedia. It's like I could go on and change it now.
I know.
But like, I mean, with the comic, from what I remember in 2000 AD, all right, there was a crossover thing, and like what they did was it was set when Shaun went off, so it covered the events of when Shaun ran off, how he got rid of the zombies. The thing they said it was a different thing, that it was set a week, so I'm sure there was a strip as well where it was called There's Something About Mary, where it was like following the one that turned into the zombie days before she turned into it with it. So but like, I mean, there definitely was that one where maybe it was in the Judge Dredd magazine or something like that, but it existed,
Right.
and I think it was on the fucking the bonus disc.
Okay.
They had like a really like a flash animation
Right,
kind of
the
showing
actual
it.
maybe that's what it was then, yeah. You'll have to root out your DVD player and the DVD to have a check of it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, that was another thing, I suppose, as well. Like, I mean, all of sort of culture kind of like cross paths there. Like, they had the whole thing about the record collection and using it to, their treasured record collection to actually kill zombies by trying to like take their heads off by spinning them like frisbee discs.
I just want that they were into DJing, but they weren't DJs. Like that was. There's people that I still know that are kind of
yes.
like,
you're still a bit like that yourself. It's not that you're a DJ, but you're
well,
you're
I suppose
into
it's a
playing music at home.
podcast. Yeah, but it's a podcast thing as well. Like there was our generation where everyone was like, not everyone, but lots of people recording their own like music off the radio because you couldn't afford it or whatever, or making your own shows where you'd kind of like pretend.
And I think as well, once you got access to the technology as it became a bit cheaper, everyon got into it as well. It's like, oh my god, I can make music.
It's like
now.
it's hardwired into you. In you, or it's into you. Sorry, my voice is going a little bit. But yeah, it's like what we're saying, amazing movie. Really had, and then of course, like you were saying, Laura, you had the Cornetto trilogy because there was a thing they were eating the strawberry Cornettos in this, and then I think I can't remember the different ones. I think it might be the walnut one. Yeah. And then the End of the World, which I think is probably the weakest out of three. Which I think we looked at it once or twice and never looked at it again. It wasn't very good. Really, I didn't like the aliens in it, and as well they kind of.
It's not that it wasn't very good. It's just it wasn't Shaun of the Dead, or it wasn't Hot Fuzz.
Yeah,
really,
it wasn't. I think most people say it's not great. Like it wasn't. Like it's not a terrible.
It's not
movie,
as memorable by far, or as quotable at all. Like there's plenty of quotes out of Shaun of the Dead, and especially in Hot Fuzz. That we might discuss Hot Fuzz at some other stage as well as part of the trilogy. Like, but sorry, back to Shaun of the Dead there.
Yeah, but like I mean, it did have it. I think it got well reviewed, but I don't think the crowd was there. Definitely not in Ireland. I think it might have been different in England, but it was a slow build. I think it did well in the cinema because it got well reviewed. Then I think it got a theatrical release over in America, but I think it was on DVD that it kind of found its home.
Yeah. And of course there is I suppose again, Edgar Wright makes great use of like music in his scenes as well, not only as just kind of sort of an incidental soundtrack, but as a central part. And I mean, you have that in spades in Shaun of the Dead. Like one of the big scenes that everyone fucking loved was when the jukebox comes on with Queen's Don't Stop Me Now, and they basically beat the zombie to death to the tune of Don't Stop Me Now with pool cues, and that was something that everybody was fucking talking about at the time.
And I think they ended up getting the rights to the Queen songs because they knew someone. I think it was the same for a lot of the music, because like a lot of it was famous songs in it, and I think it was like they knew people, so they got the rights for either cheap or kind of like they just got the rights.
Their dad knew Brian May or something.
With it, so like it's after Shaun of the Dead because once it did build up in popularity, then there was a fucking spate of imitators. I suppose, and as well there was a lot of people, like I mean George Romero was pretty much gone off the scene up until that point, and then with the double whammy of Dawn of the Dead and like Shaun of the Dead was a big tribute to Romero, and as well having the slow, because I suppose Shaun of the Dead was one of the first ones to bring the slow zombies back in, say outside of Resident Evil, because in Resident Evil I don't even know if they were really zombies, if they were like affected by the T virus or what,
And I suppose as well, because Shaun of the Dead as well wasn't just a zombie film, as you said, it was a zomcom rom or whatever. It kind of opened up the gates, I suppose, for the likes of other kind of zombie crossovers, like the likes of Dead Snow, or like Nazi zombies.
Dead Snow was very good, but if you remember, it was like it's the shitty ones I'm on about, like that thing that had Samantha Mumba in it. I think it was Boy Eats Girl or something like that. Or, where there was a lot of ones that tried to replicate Shaun of the Dead, and then there was like over the years there was like all these different ones where it's like Cockneys versus zombies.
Where he was like their pet zombie.
Fido.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Now, speaking of fight, it's a dog biting one of these
Squirking
squeaky
away,
toys.
yeah.
That was actually very good. It was like set in the 50s or 60s thing where zombies were after dealing with zombies.
Yeah,
at
they were
that
after
stage.
accepting and giving them menial jobs and tasks basically and stuff. Yeah.
And of course, then kind of like what I was saying with the whole thing with the resurgence for Romero. Then Romero ended up coming back a few years later with Land of the Dead, which I quite like. But it's what the whole thing with Romero when that did well. Unfortunately for him, he never fucking got the rights to Night of the Living Dead, so it was one of these things that went straight to public. So that's why you see a lot of things with like Night of the Living Dead or
It's in the public domain essentially.
So like there was like Return of the Living Dead or different movies complete, but like there was a lot of terrible zombie movies came out because it was a thing where it was cheap to do.
Yeah.
So just going through a list of things here, looking at them, and fucking most of them, like I think it is very, very hard to do a good zombie movie.
Yeah.
Like you can count probably on two hands. Like the
two
ones
severed hands.
yeah, that stand up. And of course, Romero then he did like there was the Diary of the Dead, and I can't remember the sequel to that, which weren't very good. Remember, it was the thing with the Irish people on the island that had all the horses.
Oh yeah, very vaguely.
And they had like I think they were using the horses as slaves or something like that. But
there was a whole spate then of sort of like contagion films, I suppose. What was the one with Brad Pitt? Where was that?
Daisy.
Daisy. I didn't know if
that was based on the book.
Yeah.
With it. I didn't like it. I thought the effects were kind of crap.
And it took too long to get going as well, I thought. It was just like, let's watch Brad Pitt sit in an airplane.
There are some bits that are good in it. Like, I mean, what I have up here is the list. Empire did a 20 best zombie movies list, and I think a lot of them are in 2000, so we'll have a quick run through and give you, like... this list is bullshit, really. I think there's one that should...
It was just something that might have been popular at the time with the readers, you know.
Well, Planet Terror at number 20. Planet Terror shouldn't really be in it at all. Dead Snow, I quite enjoy it. I'll go back and watch that again. That was there was a sequel
weird
to that as well.
kind of concept, I suppose. It was like an obvious concept, but it was done very well.
Yeah, anyone that's
Nazi
familiar with, like, you know, Call of Duty with Nazi zombies. But Paranorman in an 18, The Girl with All the Gifts, I still haven't seen that. Rec 2. Rec 2 is actually very good. But bit of a spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen Rec. They're not zombies. They're demons. That's the whole thing in it. That's the big fucking...
The reveal.
Yeah.
Thanks for spoiling it there, buddy.
No, but like Rec 2 is really good because they tell you straight. Like, I mean, this is the thing where it was set up to look like a zombie movie with the original Rec, but it wasn't. There are fucking demons in it. That's why I think it's Rec 2 is mental. Rec 2 is like Aliens. When it steps it all up, it's very, very good. Zombie Flesh Eaters, I think, should be higher than 15. World War Z shouldn't be in it at all.
No.
Zombieland.
That was another sort of a half a comedy, half a zombie kind of a thing, you know?
Yeah. Some people say that's like heavily influenced by Shaun of the Dead. I don't think it. I could be wrong, but I think Zombieland is actually based on a comic. But I could be very, very wrong with it. Dawn of the Dead is there at 12. The remake, I think that should be a lot higher up. One Cut of the Dead, haven't seen it. A lot of people seem to like it. Return of the Living Dead, amazing zombie movie from the 80s. One of the rare ones in the 80s. Reanimator, like we were saying. Wreck, the original. Like, I don't think Wreck should be in there. The original first Wreck movie and the remake of Wreck, they're not really great. It's
kind of that found footage kind of thing.
Yeah, you look at it once. Brain Dead as well. I don't think that should be Peter Jackson's thing. They're kind of zombies in it, but like the rat monkey.
Yeah.
Then Night of the Living Dead at number 6. I don't know. But Train to Busan, that's very, very good. But yeah, whether it should be, and then Shaun of the Dead is number 4, which I think deserves a really.
Could nearly stand to be a little bit higher.
Yeah, 28 days. 28 days later is excellent. Like we didn't really get into that, like talking about it at the start.
But that was like, I mean, you can't understate the impact that had at the time.
No.
Like everybody, not even just like film fans or zombie fans or fans of that. Like my mum was talking about, like,
but that's
my God, they closed down the whole of London to get that opening scene. Now, of course,
they just shot it in the morning.
Yeah, in the morning. Yeah, or like, you know, and it just stayed in people's consciousness so much as well. I think because when we had like the time of like the actual plague, coronavirus, and everywhere was shut down, people are like, oh my god, it's like 28 days later, everywhere is deserted.
But 28 days later, they just did it right. And like, I mean, the thing, Danny Boyle was fucking ahead of the game with that.
Danny Boyle.
Like, it's amazing film, and it has all the classic elements of zombie movies in it, but with them being faster and stuff, because it wasn't really done like it before. It really kind of
was scary.
Yeah, like where
zombies.
one of them was a threat.
Yeah.
Let alone fucking, you could see right, how the hell are people going to survive? People aren't going to survive.
That's it. With other classic zombie films, you're kind of like, well, they're just shuffling around. You can just fucking outwalk them. Never mind outrun them. But
28 weeks
terrifying.
later is pretty good as well, and he's doing the new one. 28 years later is coming out. I think that maybe next year, which quite looking forward to seeing. But Cillian Murphy was excellent in it. There was a lot of Irish people actually in it. And then other than that, it's like the original Day of the Dead, and number one is the original Dawn of the Dead, which I'd agree with.
It's the daddy of them all.
With it, but like even going through that, there's not many kind of from the 2000s other than the ones that we talked about with it. So it was the thing, and of course like The Walking Dead was just fucking
like, I mean, it's still rolling on, I think, at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah,
still like it's gone on. Everyone again,
it's their different
a cultural
series
phenomenon and all the rest. You know, people then went back into, I'm going to read the comics and all the rest, and it just became this thing. Like, I mean, there's the show, and then there's the Talking Dead, and the After the Walking Dead, and, you know, we're going to talk about the talk. But I think people just got zombied out then, because, like, we gave up watching it, I think, around the time Negan came into it.
Around season 7, I think, and like, I mean, the thing, I was convinced that The Walking Dead was finished. Yeah, it was like 2019, and just looked it up.
But there's there's the offshoots, isn't it? I thought. Or
with the TV show, there's still like the offshoots are going on, But it's like fucking Daryl has his own show. I think Negan has his own show. Rick had, there's too much. It was too much.
And
there was Fear the Walking Dead as well, which was another show where it's following different characters, but it kind of linked in at the same point.
And again, like, I mean, it started off great, but then you could have like one great episode and then like 3 sort of filler where nothing really happened and everyone just kind of moped around a bit.
Well, it's the thing where it's like the problem with zombie movies, if they're not done right, is like what happened with the Walking Dead. You're telling the same story over and over and over again. It's like, all right, we meet new people, it goes on. It's like there's a zombie out. You know, zombies get in, they kill people. People are getting, there's bad. You know, it just kept telling the same story in different locations.
Over and over. Yeah, that's true.
Which I think gets a little, well, for me anyway. Like, I know some people just love it, like.
Well, I suppose it's like if you're, people watch soaps and they, those kind of like.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's a soap opera. Like, people are connected to the characters, and people love the characters,
so
which is fair enough.
You turn up every week just to see what's going on, even if there's nothing happening. Yeah. Like, I mean, oftentimes Coronation Street, there's nothing happening.
I think it did. Like, the audience did drop off from it though, because people just got to. I think they thought that. By bringing I
think it was just zombie fatigue, really. I suppose everyone just got
the thing. People, but like, I mean, it's looking down through the list of things. Like, it's fucking. There's like dozens and dozens.
Dozens? You mean hundreds?
A year, I was going to say, still coming out. With it, where it's like, I mean, there is Zack Snyder's thing there as well, where Zack Snyder went back with it with the Army of the Dead, which I quite liked it. I just, a lot of people just seem to hate Zack Snyder, no matter what he does. With it, like, I thought it was all right. I mean. It's not going to fucking win Oscars or anything like that. It's not meant to. With it, but there hasn't really been too much. So it's like, even with the whole thing that it caused a resurgence, and it didn't cause a resurgence in good movies.
Yes, you have the odd one, and again, now I can't bloody remember. But you remember the one where the young fella's girlfriend was a zombie? What was that? Probably is something stupid like My Girlfriend's a Zombie. Well,
there was that TV show as well. It was based on a comic. Fucking, oh God. Say iZombie.
I'm not sure if that's it. But, there's all these sort of like quirky little ones where it's just sort of like, not the whole sort of zombie outbreak, as you said, like the likes of Fido, where it's after sort of zombies they've burned through the world and they've just sort of come to a sort of a a truce almost with humanity, where they can kind of coexist side by side.
But that's why I really like Land of the Dead, what Romero did, where it was like his vision of what it would be like, because like really he is the ground for like zombies were a totally different thing. But like I mean with Shaun of the Dead, what made it so great, and it's what 28 Days Later was, it took it out of America. For Europeans that was a big, like I mean I would never thought that you'd see a zombie movie. Like I mean if there was
in the countryside of England, like,
and like 28 Days Later, like it did it so well, you know, and like went to show, like, you know, with the whole thing, like what people you were saying, like with London being abandoned, but as well how dangerous a city is, like, you know, why it's dangerous to be in a city that big when there's that many fucking people. So get to the countryside,
that's it, and try to find somewhere where you can see people coming from and all the rest. I suppose as well, like I mean again, the world has been through coronavirus and all the rest, and I suppose like zombie films are always a little bit of a side commentary and all of that. It's kind of like there's the infected versus the non-infected, and you know, kind of it did get a bit sort of all too real there for a while, where people were masking up, and you know, people who had coronavirus were like, you know, you must isolate, you're seen as unclean, and it's like, it's not because you're unclean, you just fucking caught like the bug, like, you know. Well,
that's what I always loved about Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, the remake. The start of it kind of showed how it spread. It didn't really spread because it's like obviously it was people biting people. But it was like, if people had to stay indoors and they had to do what they were told, it was like fucking accidents caused it. People just doing stupid fucking things. Things got overrun. There was like crashes. People, you know, people panicked.
Panicking. Yeah, it is. It's
and that caused the outbreak.
Behavior, basically,
with it. And that's, I thought that was like an amazing kind of a thing with it. And like, it was Shaun of the Dead. They kind of talk, and as well it's the politeness of British people, where they're like, oh, just like an old homeless person bit me, and the whole big thing in Shaun of the Dead as well is how like the two of them don't notice that there's a zombie outbreak going on, because they're too so caught up in their own shit, and too kind of like, you know, self-centered really with it. It takes them forever to kind of, even like when there's a zombie standing right in front of them on numerous occasions.
But again, it's like, I mean, I think they do try to stay kind of true to reality, because I mean, like, if you were confronted with a zombie in real life, you'd be kind of like, nah, I can't, no, that's not a zombie, like, that's just, there's something wrong with that person, and you wouldn't actually admit, like, you know, it's like, don't say the Z word, you know.
Well, if it was fucking eating flesh and like, you know, someone's after shooting a hole in its chest and it still kept coming, you'd be like, oh, like, what other word would you use for it?
I don't know. I'm sure they come up with something else, like, you know.
I don't think they would. The only way you'd be able to communicate it to people would be as like, there's fucking zombies.
This zombie is eating my arm. Please get it off me.
But as well, with Shaun of the Dead, what I think they did really well was there's, you know, that Carpenter thing, and it's a lot of zombie movies where it's like the survivors, they hold up somewhere. Some people decide to hold up and some people run. And there's this whole thing with people surviving war zones, that generally it's the people that leave or keep going on the move that survive. That's why, like, I think it's important to take refugees in and look after refugees, because if you don't, you're going to have a fucking whole race of people obliterated. In certain circumstances, like, you know, but it's so that's the thing, you nearly always see that in zombie films, and they do that in Shaun of the Dead, where they're like, oh, we get into the Winchester pub, we'll be safe there, we can hold up there. Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead was the same. They get to the mall and they have it happy for a while, but then people
things
come in and
shit. Exactly. It always breaks down.
Yeah, where it's like, if you keep moving, and like, I mean, that's in The Walking Dead, really, you know, like, it ends up getting to a point.
That's every
where,
time
like,
they start to settle down and get a happy community, something terrible happens.
Yeah, like, I think it ends up happening that because, like, it gets to the point further on in the story where all the zombies are kind of rotting away, and you know that they're not really any threat anymore, so civilization starts to rebuild around it. But like, yeah, generally it is like kind of, if you stay in it. Return of the Living Dead, that's a big thing where it's like, well, no one survives at the end. But it's the people that do keep moving are the ones that are the survivors, whereas like someone wants to go up in an attic, and sure, even up in the attic they're fucking, you know, they'll always find a way to get at you. And
it's commentary as well on how people can't appreciate even what they have as well. Like, I mean, you're talking, you know, sort of the zombie, the mall one, whereas like, as I said, people, they got there, they have it great, they can defend the mall, there's security on the outside, they have everything they could want on the inside, and yet somehow it still falls to shit, because they're just like, oh, this is shit, I don't want to stay here, let's go somewhere, you know. And fucking, they just can't work together as a group. Like, they always have to have their infighting and all the rest. So it's just, can humans not ever just get along?
No.
Even when, like, their own life is at stake. You know?
Well, even the whole thing saying the original was like they were all getting on grand and your woman was pregnant and all that, but then bikers came in and it was like they spent ages getting rid of all the zombies, and then all of a sudden fucking
ruined
this shit, kind of like, you know. Whereas in Zack Snyder's one wasn't that they just wanted to get out, they were going fucking stir crazy in the mall, so they just wanted to get out and get to the island. That was a brilliant ending. Like they weren't really doing after credits, like, you know, Marvel really brought in the after credits thing big time. Like, I mean, not that it wasn't never done before, but the after credits,
it was such a shock, wasn't it? It was fantastic,
because it kind of, you felt like, oh, they're setting up a sequel where like it's going to follow them onto the island, and then it's like they just get murdered like
in short bursts throughout the credits. Exactly. It didn't even pay a lot of time with it, or, you know, didn't linger on it. Just like, nope, they're all dead.
But sure, if they decided not to go in the first place, they would have like probably survived, because like it was just even getting out of the thing. It wasn't. They wanted to get over and get the guns. Let's go back and rewatch it, actually. I can't remember bits and pieces.
Talking out your hat now. You're like, it's the people who move survive, and they're like, no, why would you move? Just stay where you are.
Yeah, they should
Make up your freaking mind, man.
But that's what, I don't know what else to say about zombies. Careful of them. Don't trust the zombie.
Mind yourself. Try not to get anyone. Don't let anyone bite you.
Were you on the girlfriend one? Are you taking a Return of the Living Dead 3 in the 90s?
I don't think so. No.
That was actually good. That was done by Brian Nielsen.
It was more recent. Was it like Abigail or something like that? It was called, or something.
Oh, well, there was that thing with Schwarzenegger. That
was the one with the daughter. All right, wasn't? No, but it was along those lines where it's just a small thing where like it was kind of a comedy. I have a feeling it might be New Zealand or Australian or something like that. I don't know. I should have tried to remember it sooner and Googled it.
You should have. How dare you?
Yes, I wish I'd thought of my thought before I thought my thought.
But look, zombie movies, they're not going to be going anywhere.
No.
I think it'll be interesting
to see. They might very slowly shuffle along.
It'll be interesting to see if 28 Days Later has as much of an impact as like...
And I suppose...
28 years
I know I keep mentioning about post worldwide lockdown and all the rest, if we will have more sort of contagion films like that, there were like, along the lines of The Stand or something like that.
There were things that, but I think it's just people are sick of it, you know.
Yes, I think it's probably too close to home. People are like, Jesus, I just fucking came out of lockdown. I have no wish to sit down and watch another one. But
I think what happens is like, it's too on the nose for that. Well, I think you're seeing like
too soon.
No, but you know, like, I mean, the thing with Vietnam, what you had, like, they had a lot of horror movies. Like Last House on the Left was influenced by Vietnam. Fucking a lot of slasher movies were like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a political statement against Vietnam. You know, where it's, I think, a zombie movie about coronavirus too. Whereas I think more kind of like authoritarian governments or people getting their minds taken over, or solitary kind of things. People, you know, is more of a thing. Guest, or was it No Host? Remember that? It's anyone who hasn't seen Host. Do you remember it?
The name is ringing a bell. Tell me.
The Zoom, the movie that was made over Zoom.
Yes.
So it was like, it was only an hour long because like that was the free. So that you had, it's fucking brilliant. That's very much, I think that brought in a load of things that if you forget about, like what it was like being in lockdown for a lot of people with the whole thing, you know, that was a great fucking movie. Look,
go watch some Shaun of the Dead. Watch Hot Fuzz as well while you're at it, because that's also a good film, even though it's nothing to do with zombies. But it's all part of the Cornetto trilogy, which is quite a stellar piece of work, really.
Yes,
I suppose.
But look, until next time, thank you for listening. I don't know how to resolve it.
Let's go to the Winchester and have a pint.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we never talked about the Winchester. Let's talk about the Winchester for half an hour. But look, thank you very much for listening. If you like the show, give it a like, subscribe, the usual kind of things. Tell your friends about it. That's a big one. If you like it, tell people that you like it. Say, there's this show. It's a little show that doesn't have any ulterior motives. It's not trying to take money from us or do anything or sell us anything. Like, what are those jabs called that people are taking for diabetes, weight loss?
Oh, the Ozempic and all.
We're not trying to sell you Ozempic.
Just going to get a strike notice from Ozempic now. Well, all the other ones like Wegovy and all the rest. Semaglutides, let's just call them that.
But look, thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.